The moment I stepped into the private room, I saw my fiancée wrapped around my adopted brother. Her eyes, with their slight, upward tilt, held none of their usual softness. It wasn't until she saw me that a smirk ghosted across her lips. Then, she leaned in and pressed a kiss to the side of his neck. "Bro, she's drunk. Don't worry about it," my adopted brother said, feigning panic, but he couldn't hide the triumphant challenge in his eyes. I walked over and kicked him so hard he flew across the room. Thump! He hit the floor and didn't move. I leaned down and checked for a pulse. He was breathing. Youth has its advantages. He just passed out. I grabbed my fiancée by the arm and dragged her to the car. She slapped me across the face, calling me a spineless punk. "I'm a thorn, for God's sake. Why the hell would I marry a grease monkey like you?" She wasn't wrong. Before the Hayes family found me, I worked in a garage. My life was tires and torque wrenches, filthy in her eyes. I pointed behind her. Confused, she turned her head. Thwack! My fist connected with the back of her skull. Just like that, she was sleeping peacefully. After dropping Kelsey off, I headed to the Hayes estate. A butler opened the massive iron gates, revealing a 5-story mansion. The manicured gardens, rolling lawns, and stone bridges over a man-made stream were all monuments to the family's power. The living room was buzzing with tension tonight. My parents, Arthur and Helen, my sister Chloe, and my adopted brother Caleb were all gathered around the coffee table, their faces grim. The second I walked in, Chloe shot up and threw a piece of lingerie onto the table. "Ethan, did you steal my underwear?" she accused, her voice sharp and righteous. My mother, Helen, spoke more softly. She told me Caleb had found in my room. Caleb, the adopted son. I glanced down. The underwear was from Victoria's Secret Pink. "You degenerate," my father, Arthur Hayes, roared, slamming his fist on the table. "There's some kind of fluid on it. You're an animal." Caleb chimed in, playing the innocent victim. "Bro, just admit it. We'll forgive you." Half his face was swollen, a faint shoe print still visible on his cheek. He wouldn't dare tell them I'm the one who knocked him out. He was too scared they'd find out about him and Kelsey. So instead, he chose slander. "Ruin my name." Chloe threatened to break my hands. Arthur threatened to whip me with a leather belt soaked in water. Helen just looked at me with crushing disappointment, begging me to confess. Caleb was soaking it all in. I looked at them, my family. "You believe anything he says, no matter what." "Bro, would I lie?" Caleb asked, putting on his best wounded expression. Arthur snorted. "We have the evidence right here. Are you still going to deny it?" Chloe wrapped a comforting arm around Caleb, glaring at me. "Caleb is a good person. How could you possibly compare to him, you stray?" This woman, who shared a third of my DNA, didn't even try to hide her contempt for me. So I pulled out my phone and played a video from the hidden security camera in my room. The screen showed Caleb sneaking into my room, placing the underwear on my bed, and then taking 3 seconds to defile it. As soon as he finished, he ran out, shouting for our parents and Chloe. Caleb's face went pale. How do you have a camera in there?" "To keep vermin out," I said flatly, putting my phone away. The room fell silent. After a long moment, Caleb stammered, "Bro, I was just joking around." Arthur's face was a rigid mask. "If it was a joke, then let's just drop it." Helen, after a moment's thought, suggested Caleb should at least apologize. The joke had gone too far. Chloe snatched the underwear, balled it up, and threw it in the trash. "I'm not pressing charges. Caleb doesn't need to apologize to him." I managed a small smile. "An apology won't do any good here." "That's more like it," Chloe said, thinking I was backing down, but I was planning on calling the cops. Chloe lunged, grabbing my phone and smashing it on the marble floor. I wrapped my hand around her throat and lifted her off her feet. She struggled, clawing at my arm. I drew back my other hand and slapped her hard across the face again and again. Chloe's mouth started to swell. You hit me," she choked out, her eyes burning with a look that could kill. Slap, 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 slap. I hit her again until her eyes went glassy. "You broke my phone. You think you shouldn't have to pay for it." She was turning purple, unable to speak. Arthur started to threaten me, telling me to let her go, but he stopped short when he saw the look in my eyes. Helen quickly promised to buy me a new phone tomorrow. Only then did I release Chloe, scoffing at how she still needed mommy to bail her out. What a waste. Chloe seethed. I'll pay for it, fine, but you can't call the police. Deal. I grabbed a spoon from the dining table, shoved it into Caleb's mouth, and twisted it violently. He gagged, blood bubbling from his lips. I roared in his face, "How's that taste? Better than kissing Kelsey?" The name hung in the air like a thunderclap, stunning the Hayes family into silence. I kept twisting the spoon, and Caleb's body started to convulse. Arthur and Helen tried to intervene, but I warned them to stay out of it. He touched my fiancée, then tried to frame me. A little blood tonight seems more than fair, don't you think? The bloody bubbles turned into a crimson stream, dribbling down his chin. The next day, I was back at the garage. A guy who screamed, "New money," was lounging in the customer waiting area. He was dressed in a custom-tailored cream-colored suit, and the diamond chips on his watch glittered under the fluorescent lights. The sight of him gave me a headache. Everyone called him Julian. Rumor was he was some rich kid from New York City, just passing through Chicago. He grinned and bounced over to me. "So, have you thought about it? I'll raise the salary another 30%. Name your price." I was shocked by his generosity, but I still shook my head. "I'm not really interested in custom builds. Sorry." This was the third time I turned him down. 2 months ago, I'd tuned his sports car, squeezing another 100 horsepower out of the engine. He'd been impressed, claiming even the top mechanics in New York couldn't match my work. He'd been trying to recruit me ever since. "Don't you work to make money? I'll make it worth your while." Of course I needed money, but I had reasons I couldn't leave. Besides, I didn't know anything about this Julian guy's background. The world was full of scammers pretending to be rich. Seeing I wouldn't budge, he didn't get angry. He just told me to think it over. After Julian left, another visitor arrived. Victoria Hayes, my older sister. This was only the second time she'd ever sought me out. Victoria was a workaholic, practically living at the Hayes Corporation headquarters. Today, her expression was colder than usual, her brow furrowed in anger. "Ethan, your behavior yesterday was completely out of line. Caleb may have started it, but he's the family favorite. You didn't have to make such an ugly scene." I thought back to when I first returned to the Hayes family. I had genuinely tried to connect with them. Blood is thicker than water, after all. These were my parents, my sisters. But I'd given up on that fantasy long ago. This whole family was a freak show. "Just give a message for me," I said. "I'm not trying to compete with Caleb for anything. Tell him to stop targeting me." In Victoria, I added, "Just make sure you hold up your end of the bargain." A complicated look crossed her face. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'll let you know as soon as there's a donor. I've already arranged for the best private care at the hospital." Good. As long as she got the treatment she needed. That's all that mattered. I was just a toddler when I got separated from my family at a park. I grew up in a group home after that. The house mother, Mrs. Gable, used to tell us we were lost little angels and that our parents missed us terribly. She said one day they'd find us and everything would be perfect. But my perfect ending never came. Instead, Mrs. Gable passed away from cancer. The group home was torn down to make way for a high-rise. I was 12. All the kids were given a small payout from the state and sent on their way. I had nowhere to go. As I stood on the sidewalk, lost, a little girl bounced up to me. "Hi, I'm Lily." I knew her. She was a girl who was always smiling, showing off 2 tiny, sharp canine teeth. Lily grabbed my hand and said she was going to live with a distant uncle. She said I could come with her. Lily's parents were gone. But unlike me, she had family. An uncle who would take her in. A home. I wanted a home, too. Of course I said yes. We handed over the $10,000 the state had given each of us to her aunt. Everyone was happy that day. Her aunt even made us fried chicken. Lily grinned, her little teeth showing. "Now we have a home," she said. "Yeah," I nodded emphatically, but it wasn't true. Her uncle didn't make much money, and his wife, our new aunt, never let him forget it. Before long, she stopped smiling at us, too. A month in, she announced we had to cut back on expenses. No more meat for me and Lily. I remember that night, I overheard them whispering about sending their son to a private school. Without proper meals, Lily and I got skinny and pale. You could tell just by looking at us that we were malnourished. A year passed like that. Then one day, our aunt told us the $20,000 was gone. From now on, we had to earn our own keep. I talked to Mr. Henderson at the diner. "You two can start washing dishes there. It's $500 a month." I was 13. Lily was only 12. How were we supposed to work as dishwashers? I refused. My aunt's face instantly darkened. Then get out. This family doesn't support freeloaders. We're just kids. We have to go to school. When will we have time to wash dishes? I pleaded with her, but she was a cruel woman, her eyes glinting. You don't need school. You're worthless. You'd be better off earning money. Her uncle, standing by, looked uneasy. He tried to say something, but she unleashed a torrent of abuse on him, and he fell silent. Lily gritted her teeth and told her aunt she would do it. She would drop out of school, but only if they let me keep studying. Are you crazy? I hissed at her. She clamped her hand over my mouth and shot me a fierce look, telling me to shut up. Since I wasn't family, my aunt couldn't really force me, so she let it go for the time being. After they left, I was furious. You have a heart condition. You're just a kid. You can't work at a restaurant. For the past year, I've been trying to get Lily to tell them about her heart, but she always refused. Today, she finally told me why. If her aunt knew she was sick, she would resent her even more. She'd probably kick us both out. No one wants to raise a sick kid. Let's just tough it out. We'll be grown up in a few years. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I'll go, I said finally. You keep going to school. This is your family, after all. Lily shook her head. This isn't my home. We're both homeless. Her eyes clouded over. Besides, I'm not smart, Ethan. You should be the one to get an education. When you make it big, you could buy me a huge dinner, right? Yeah, I promise. My teeth clenched. If I have food on my plate, you'll never go hungry. A bright smile spread across her face. Pinky promise. Our two small fingers intertwined, a promise sealed. From that day on, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I didn't waste a single minute. Outside of eating and sleeping, I was completely immersed in my studies. My effort was carrying the dreams of two people. Lily came home late every night and would collapse in a bed. The malnutrition combined with the grueling work made her condition worse. Finally, she collapsed. She was burning up with a fever, her forehead scarily hot. Her aunt was completely indifferent, just telling her to sleep it off. Tears streamed down my face as I knelt before her uncle. I know you spent all our money on your son's tuition. Just give me $500. I'll take her to the hospital. The uncle glanced nervously at his wife. She slammed her hand on the table, calling me an ungrateful little bastard. Money. There's not a penny. If she's going to die, let her die. Late that night, Lily got worse. She started talking nonsense. Finally scared that she might actually die, her aunt shoved $1,000 at me and told me to get her to the hospital. If she's going to die, she's not dying in my house. I threw Lily onto my back and ran, talking to her the whole way. Lily, you have to hold on. My name is Lily. She mumbled, her eyelids getting heavier. Under the dim streetlights, our small shadows stretched out long behind us. The next morning, Lily's fever had broken. She saw my bloodshot eyes and patted the space next to her on the hospital bed, scooting over. You didn't sleep at all, did you? Come on, squeeze in. She smiled, her little teeth showing. I'm alive. I'm so happy. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her sweet face. I finally believed Mrs. Gable. Angels were real. The doctor said Lily's heart condition was serious, and she was also severely anemic. I decided to drop out of school and get a job. There was no way I was letting her go back to her aunt and uncle's house. The patient in the next bed was a mechanic who owned his own garage. He heard our story and, out of sympathy, asked if I wanted to learn the trade from him. Of course I did. I always had a knack for machinery, and I was a quick, dedicated learner. Soon, I was able to help out around the shop. I had a way to earn a living, and I swore to myself I would take care of Lily for the rest of my life. But her heart wasn't getting any better. The doctor said her only hope was a transplant. Otherwise, she only had a few years left. The cost of a transplant was astronomical, something I could never afford. And finding a donor was a shot in the dark. Just when I felt crushed by the weight of it all, Victoria Hayes appeared. She found me and showed me a DNA test. It confirmed we were immediate relatives. Ethan, you're my brother. You've been missing for 20 years. Victoria wanted me to return to the family and, as the eldest son, fulfill an arranged marriage contract with Kelsey Thorne. Pack your things. You're coming with me now, she said, certain I wouldn't refuse. She was right. I didn't hesitate. I had only one condition, that the Hayes family would cover all of Lily's medical expenses. For Victoria, the cost was nothing. She agreed instantly, but warned me not to betray Kelsey. I told Lily the news, that the Hayes family would pay for her treatment. They're rich. You're going to get better. You'll be able to live a normal life. She was happy for me and for herself. But when she heard I had to marry another woman, a shadow passed over her bright eyes. That's great, she said, patting my head. I'm happy for you, Ethan. Life back with the Hayes family was nothing like I imagined. It was 100 times worse. The year I went missing, they adopted Caleb to take my place. Now, I was living in a dusty, converted storage room, an outcast in my own home. They were a perfect, happy family. I was the intruder. My days were spent fending off Caleb's schemes and dealing with Kelsey. It was called cultivating our relationship. In reality, it meant I followed her wherever she went. When she was drunk or done partying, I took her home. Kelsey was a spoiled princess who looked down on me. She hated me, found me embarrassing. If she didn't want me at her table, I'd sit across the room. If she didn't want to see my face, I'd wait for her outside. Kelsey called me a robot, said I never showed any emotion. When she flirted with male models, I had no expression. When she made out with Caleb, I had no expression. With her chin held high, she looked at me, convinced she had me figured out. You know you're not good enough for me. That's why you're too insecure to show any feelings. The smug satisfaction on her face was infuriating. Every time she psychoanalyzed me like that, my fingers would start to itch, an itch to hit something. I'm not a patient man by nature, but for Lily, I was willing to put up with it. Lately, my mother Helen had been growing concerned. I was becoming more assertive, especially in my clashes with Caleb. Ethan is so headstrong. After he marries Kelsey, who knows how he'll bully poor Caleb? Arthur was dismissive. Caleb will be my successor, the head of the Hayes Corporation. How can a man who marries into another family compare to that? You're going to make Ethan marry into the Thorns? Helen asked, surprised. Of course. I raised Caleb myself. He's far more capable than Ethan. Look at Ethan. How could I hand over the family business to a mechanic? You have a point. Helen nodded. But does he have to marry into their family? He's still our son. A flicker of something cold passed through Arthur's eyes. He had little affection for me. Since he had already chosen Caleb as his heir, he needed to suppress me, to extinguish any ambitions I might have. Marrying me off into the Thorne family was the perfect solution. Besides, with Ethan in the Thorne household, we'll have a man on the inside. He can help Caleb in the future. But Helen was still worried. With Ethan's temper, I don't think he'll ever submit to Caleb. A cruel thought seemed to occur to Arthur. Then we'll just have to break him at the engagement party. 5. The union of the Hayes and Thorne families was the biggest event of the Chicago business world's social calendar. The guests were all titans of industry. The driveway of the five-star hotel was lined with cars worth millions. As everyone watched, Kelsey Thorne, dressed in a stunning designer gown, walked onto the stage. She looked like a queen surveying her subjects, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. A cold smirk touched her lips. I had a bad feeling. She snatched the microphone from the MC and announced to the entire room that she despised me. My name is Kelsey Thorne, and I'm being forced by my family to marry Ethan Hayes. But he is not worthy of me. If I had a choice, I would rather marry Caleb Hayes. Therefore, from this day forward, my marriage to Ethan will be in name only. Her words were like knives, each one carving up my dignity, twisting in the wound. The guests exchanged shocked glances. They had come for a dinner party, not a public execution. Caleb, the picture of innocence, walked over to comfort me. He couldn't keep the smile from his lips, but he still managed to say, "Bro, Kelsey's young and doesn't know any better. Don't take it to heart. There's still a long life ahead of you. She'll come to see how good you are," he whispered, then leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You're punching way above. Wait. My family came over to comfort me as well." Helen said, "Caleb is more accomplished than you are. You need to learn to accept your place. Victoria, as of today, you are Kelsey Thorne's fiancée. Every man in Chicago will envy you. Arthur, be patient. Give her time. Maybe she'll change her mind." Then, Chloe shoved a phone into my hand. "Here, a brand new Galaxy Fold to replace the one I broke. Cheer up." I shot her a look. I could see the malicious glee in her eyes. My public humiliation was a source of deep satisfaction for her. I gripped the new phone. Perfect timing. I plugged a flash drive into it and projected dozens of short video clips onto the massive screen behind the stage. The images that flashed across the screen were shocking. Clip after clip of Kelsey with different men. Mostly models, but Caleb made plenty of appearances too. These were all things she'd done right in front of me, just to humiliate me. What she hadn't counted on was that I'd be documenting her greatest hits. Ever since a customer tried to scam me at the garage, I'd gotten into the habit of recording everything. A wave of gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd as I calmly walked onto the stage. I picked up the microphone. "This is just a little game, Kelsey. And I like to play," I announced. "We love to embarrass each other. The more humiliating, the better. For the rest of the evening, please eat, drink, and be merry. And for anyone who wants to see the full, uncut versions of these videos, just DM me for the link." Both families looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Kelsey's mother clutched her chest and fainted. 6. The scandal was huge. The next day, it was trending online. The Thorne family demanded an explanation from Arthur, threatening consequences if they didn't get one. Arthur raged at me. "Kelsey is immature, but you should know better. Do you have any idea what your position is? You should have just swallowed your pride and taken it." I looked at him bewildered. "What is my position? Am I not your son?" That woman stomped all over me. Was I supposed to smile and thank her for it? He said Kelsey was immature because no one had ever dared to stand up to her. Well, she was about to learn a lesson. I was going to make her regret what she did at that engagement party for the rest of her life. Helen tried to smooth things over, saying I should consider Caleb's position. He deliberately messed around with my fiancée to humiliate me. Why should I consider him? Caleb lowered his eyes, looking hurt. I was wrong, but you can't force love. Kelsey was always the one who initiated things. I just went along with it to keep the peace between our families. What a master of manipulation. I couldn't help but laugh. Chloe shot me a venomous look, rushing to Caleb's side. "Stop being so self-righteous. If you had never come back, he and Kelsey would be together. If I hadn't gotten lost, there would be no Caleb," I retorted. "He's my replacement. Now the replacement is trying to run the show." "What is wrong with you?" Crash. Arthur threw an ashtray at me. It grazed my cheek and shattered on the floor. "You ungrateful brat. What are you talking about? Caleb is a fine young man. How could he possibly be your replacement?" His reaction was so extreme, it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Now Helen was angry too, her gentle demeanor gone. "He was with me all those years you were gone. You will not speak about him like that," she said, her face cold. Chloe stared at me, her eyes full of hate. "You can't compare to Caleb." Even Victoria, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Ethan, you went too far this time." I looked at all of them. It was pointless. "Fina, I'm leaving." 7. I walked out without a second thought and went straight to the hospital to be with Lily. The news about the engagement party was everywhere. She'd seen it on her phone. Lily was the only one who cared about me. "That Kelsey has no taste. You're so much better than Caleb. Let them have each other." She knew I didn't love Kelsey, that I was only enduring this humiliation for her. The thought made her unbearably sad, and her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I'm such a burden on you. Your life shouldn't be like this." "Uffed," I said, puffing out my chest and forcing a grin. "Don't be ridiculous. As soon as you're better, we're getting out of this hellhole." At that, Lily's eyes lit up. "Let's go live by the ocean. Let's go live by the ocean." The ocean? I was confused. She'd never mentioned liking the ocean before. Lily pulled out her phone and showed me picture after picture of oceanfront views. "It's so beautiful, and you can feel the sea breeze. It's so much quieter than the city." She smiled her special smile, her eyes full of a longing so deep it was as if she were already there. I teased her. "I hear rent is pretty expensive by the ocean." "Yeah, renting isn't a great idea." A flicker of sadness crossed her face. "So we'll buy a place." Lily was shocked. "Where would we get that kind of money?" I did a quick search. A 2-bedroom condo would be around $400,000. "We'll find a way." I told her not to worry, that things would get better. That night, I fell asleep in the chair by her bed. Where she was, that was home. 8. A couple of days later, Kelsey actually showed up at the garage. Her makeup was perfect, her lipstick flawless. She had clearly put a lot of effort into her appearance. She told me she wanted the wedding to proceed as planned and for me to marry into her family as soon as possible. I was stunned. I had assumed things were over between us. Had she lost her mind? There was no way I was marrying her now. In my eyes, Kelsey was a public bus. Marrying a woman like that, I need a hat rack for all the horns I'd be wearing. But I didn't refuse her outright. I just told her I wouldn't be the one marrying into her family. We can get married, but you'll have to move in with the Hayes family. I said it deliberately, knowing she would never agree. If it were Caleb she was marrying, maybe she'd consider it. But me? Never. That was the whole point of the arrangement. Kelsey was an only child, the heir to the Thorne fortune. She would never leave her family. Our conversation ended on a sour note. As she left, she shot me a nasty look and threatened to make me pay. Her idea of making me pay involved a group of thugs she'd had Caleb hire. 7 or 8 of them showed up at the garage, trying to start trouble. Kelsey and Caleb stood off to the side, smirking. Bro, this has nothing to do with me. I just came with Kelsey to see what was going on, Caleb said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. He was a natural, but today was not their day. Because Julian Croft, the guy from New York, was standing right behind me, his expression growing darker by the second. Julian made one phone call, and 100 of his guys showed up. The hired thugs dropped to the ground, their hands over their heads. Kelsey's face went pale. Don't you dare touch me. I'm Kelsey Thorne, she stammered. She tried to use her family name to intimidate them, but Julian just laughed. The Thornes? Who gives a damn about the Thornes? I'm Julian Croft from New York. Caleb gasped. He'd heard of Julian Croft, New York's most notorious playboy. He immediately started sucking up, bowing and scraping. Mr. Croft, an honor, a real honor. Honor this, Julian snarled, forcing both Kelsey and Caleb to crawl between his legs. They were humiliated, but they had no choice. After they were gone, I thanked Julian for his help. He brought up the custom build again. A 750 horsepower engine. It's being flown in next week. I wanted to work on it. I trust you. Julian said if I refused again, he'd find someone else in New York. He gave me 2 more days to think about it. This time I hesitated. Caleb went home furious. He couldn't touch Julian, so he directed all his anger at me. When the family heard what happened, they weren't happy with me either. Chloe wanted to teach me a lesson. He just stood there and watched Caleb get humiliated. We raised an animal, she said, her eyes like poison needles. Arthur's eyes were cold and dark. Caleb, you are the heir to this family. You cannot be disgraced. That brat must pay. Only Helen hesitated. Ethan, he's our son after all. Chloe cut her off. Mom, he doesn't even consider us his family. Why do you still care about that monster? So what are you going to do? Helen asked. Chloe's plan was to have my legs broken to avenge Caleb. If he's crippled, the family will take care of him. Arthur thought that was too crude. He turned to Victoria, who had been sitting quietly in the corner. Vicky, what do you think? His eldest daughter had always been the level-headed one, and she was the one who brought Ethan back. Victoria looked at Caleb. What was Kelsey's reaction? Caleb said Kelsey had been crying the whole way home, vowing to make Ethan regret it, to make him come crawling back to her. Victoria understood. A plan began to form in her mind. In that case, here's what we'll do. As she laid out her plan, a sinister grin spread across Caleb's face. It was evening when I got the call from the hospital. The doctor told me, his voice full of regret, that Lily had died suddenly from heart failure. The words hit me like a physical blow. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I ran to the hospital, bursting through the door of her room. Time stopped. Lily was lying there, perfectly still. Her eyes were closed, her long lashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks. Her brow was slightly furrowed, as if she were just deeply asleep. I moved closer, my hand trembling as I reached out to touch her face. Her skin was cold and hard. I couldn't accept it. My whole world was collapsing. It wasn't until a nurse told me what had happened that I demanded to see the 24-hour security footage from her private room. I watched as Caleb and Chloe stormed in, hurling insults at Lily. Every word was poison. Chloe, you worthless bitch. Why should the Hayes family pay for you? You should just die. Caleb, we're cutting off your treatment. Get out of this hospital now. Lily tried to call me, but Chloe snatched her phone and smashed it to pieces. You're monsters, Lily whispered, turning away from them, her small shoulders tense. Chloe stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face. Crack! The sound ripped through my heart, leaving it raw and bleeding. They continued to taunt her, to laugh at her. Lily's face grew paler and paler. She was like a cornered animal, helpless against their vicious attack. Half an hour later, satisfied, they finally left. By then, it was too late for Lily. Slowly, her breathing stopped. I watched her die on screen. Caleb, Chloe, you're going to die. I went back to the Hayes estate. Chloe was lounging on the sofa, painting her nails. When she saw me, a mocking smile played on her lips. Well, look who's back. Still have a nerve to show your face here. I strode over to her and drove my fist in her brow bone. Crack! The bone shattered, and blood gushed out, covering her face. As she screamed in agony, I wrapped my hand around her throat and hauled her to her feet. Then I kicked her hard in the stomach. Chloe retched, vomiting up her last meal. Her eyes were wide with terror as she struggled to get away. But I wasn't going to let her go. I hit her again and again, smashing my fists in her face. Her nose, her eye sockets, her cheekbones, her jaw. I broke them all. The living room was a wreck, the floor spattered with blood. Even after she passed out, I didn't stop. Not until the house staff finally called the police and managed to pull me off of her. While I was in custody, an investigation was launched into Lily's death. The security footage clearly showed that Caleb and Chloe were directly responsible. Things had gotten serious. Arthur and Victoria rushed to the station, demanding to see me. They told me Lily's death was an accident and that they were prepared to offer a generous financial settlement. She was an orphan anyway. We can give the money to you. Just name your price, Victoria said, as if she were closing a business deal. The earnest, persuasive look on her face made me sick. This girl was an outsider. Don't let a dead person ruin this family, Arthur added, trying to pull rank. His words only fueled my rage. Chloe was badly hurt. She's in a hospital. This has gone far enough. Caleb is young and foolish. Be the bigger person and forgive your brother this time. They wanted me to let it go, to drop the charges against Caleb. If I didn't, they would press charges against me and I'd go to prison. One played good cop, the other bad cop, both trying to manipulate me. I slowly brought my left pinky finger to my mouth. As I watched, confused, I bit down. Hard. Crunch. The bone snapped. I spit the severed fingertip onto the table between us. It was my vow. I will send Caleb, Chloe, and anyone else involved in this to hell. Their worthless lives aren't worth a single hair on Lily's head. How dare you touch her? How dare you? Arthur and Victoria stared at me, their faces pale with shock, speechless. The Hayes family held a meeting. Chloe was in a hospital, but the rest of them were there. The mood was grim. I spoke to our lawyer. Arthur said, his face grave. If we press charges, he'll get at least a year and a half. By the time he gets out, he'll have cooled off. We can offer him some compensation then, and that will be the end of it. Victoria, still haunted by the image of me biting off my own finger, was uneasy. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, and she turned on Caleb. They should have just cut off the funding. Why did he have to go and provoke that girl? Arthur was also furious with Caleb. Insulting a sick person. What were you thinking? Caleb put on his sad puppy dog face again, and Helen's heart went out to him. Don't blame Caleb. That girl cost us a fortune. She's dead now, so we're even. They decided to press charges in Chloe's name. I couldn't go to prison. I had to get revenge for Lily. I thought of Julian Croft. I demanded to see him. The next morning, Julian showed up at the detention center. He laughed at the mess I was in. I tried to explain what happened, but he wasn't interested. There are only two sides to every story. The one who wins and the one who gets screwed. If you get screwed, it's because you're weak. You can't blame anyone else. He made me the same offer as before, but this time he was more direct. Be my dog and I'll help you. I had no choice. I agreed, and I made him a promise. If 750 horsepower isn't enough, I can get you 1200. Julian's eyes lit up. With his help, the charges against me disappeared. When I got out, he told me to leave the Hayes family alone for now and come with him to New York. There were races to win. I poured everything I had into my work, helping Julian win race after race. He started to think he was a professional driver. Until one day, after crossing the finish line, his brakes failed. He slammed into a barrier at full speed. The sound of the impact was deafening. The supercar disintegrated. My heart sank. I took a moment to say a silent prayer for him. But Julian didn't die. He was severely injured and spent 6 months in a hospital. He lost his left arm and his right leg. When he was finally discharged, he had lost all interest in racing. He handed the team over to me. Julian devoted his life to charity, traveling the country to speak about the dangers of illegal street racing. As a disabled man, he was a powerful warning, and he quickly became a public safety icon. I took over Julian's racing team, along with the $200 million he gave me. He said it was his way of fulfilling his promise. Money is power. I stayed in New York and started building my own empire. I opened a high-end auto-tuning club. Through Julian's connections, I befriended a group of wealthy young heirs. Their influence opened a lot of doors for me. I expanded from the auto industry into logistics, import, export, and some gray market ventures. This brought me into contact with some powerful figures who operated on both sides of the law. As my status grew, I attracted the attention of many women. They threw themselves at me, but their eyes were always filled with calculation, not the pure, bright light that had shone from lilies. I turned them all down. Hate was my only companion. During this time, Helen and Victoria called, trying to mend our relationship. Kelsey also reached out, hinting that we could still get married, that she wouldn't force me to join her family. I scoffed at their attempts. The Hayes family knew I was connected to Julian Croft and had been keeping tabs on me. My success made them nervous. A year later, I returned to Chicago with an army at my back. It was time to pay for Lily's life with the blood of the Hayes family. Caleb was the most terrified. All his past actions had become a death sentence hanging over his head. He was too scared to see me, hiding at home like a coward. Finally, Arthur and Helen asked to meet with me. They booked a private room at the city's best restaurant, inviting me under the pretense of a welcome home dinner. This time I accepted. When we met, Arthur's face was creased into an unfamiliar, friendly smile. Helen clasped my hand, asking me how I'd been. Victoria was with them, her expression a mixture of emotions. My usually taciturn older sister was suddenly talkative. Caleb and Chloe feel terrible about what happened. They wanted to apologize in person, but they were afraid you wouldn't forgive them. Ethan, listen to me. We're family. We shouldn't be fighting like this. Arthur quickly agreed, offering me 5% of the company's shares as compensation for Lily's death. Ethan, your father is making a generous offer. Let's just put this unpleasantness behind us, Helen pleaded, her eyes full of a mother's love. I looked at the three of them, at their ugly, grotesque faces. I laughed. You want me to let go of my hatred? You'll have to ask Lily if she agrees. Victoria frowned. What are you going to do? Hold a seance? Don't be an idiot. I sneered. I'm going to send her killers to her, so they can kneel, beg for her forgiveness, and then rot in hell for eternity. I held up my hand, showing them the stump of my pinky, a reminder of the vow I had made. Helen gasped, her eyes filling with tears. Arthur's face turned stony. That's enough. You're only powerful because you're riding Julian Croft's coattails. If you know there's a tiger behind me, how do you plan to stop me? I shot back. Before he could answer, I threw a DNA test report on the table. It proved that Caleb was Arthur's biological son. The revelation was a bombshell. Helen's mind flashed back to Arthur's first love, a woman whose beauty had always made her feel inadequate. Caleb's features. He looked just like her. Helen snapped, lunging at the man she had been married to for decades, screaming and clawing at him. While they were distracted, I opened the door to the private room. A crowd of reporters swarmed in, their phones recording the whole sordid affair. Victoria stared at me, her voice trembling. Is this your revenge? Revenge. I shook my head. The revenge hadn't even started. The news of the illegitimate son sent shockwaves through the city. I paid an army of online trolls to dig up the story of Lily's death from the previous year. The security footage of Caleb and Chloe tormenting her went viral. Someone leaked that Arthur had paid to have the story buried, forcing a settlement. Public outrage exploded. The authorities reopened the investigation. Caleb was taken into custody, and Chloe, still in a hospital, was placed under police guard. The Hayes Corporation was bombarded with complaints from the public. Fire code violations, false advertising, unsafe working conditions. Every conceivable issue was reported. Investigators found numerous violations and froze the company's assets. With no money to pay its workers, the production lines ground to a halt and employees started to riot. The Hayes family was on the verge of collapse. But Arthur had bigger problems. Helen had kicked him out and was filing for divorce. Still, his main concern was Caleb. He had to protect his son, the child of his first love. He came to me again, offering to sign over all his shares if I would help get Caleb out of jail. He's still your brother. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I was unfair to you. His eyes were full of a desperate hope. But it was too late for apologies. Your company is about to go bankrupt. What am I supposed to do with it? Display its corpse? I paused, then smiled. You always say blood is thicker than water. Let's test that theory. A sense of dread washed over Arthur's face. What? What do you mean? I nodded to one of my bodyguards. He opened the door, and a large, drunk man stumbled in. He claimed Arthur's first love was his wife, and that their illegitimate son was a source of great shame for him. I'm going to teach you a lesson, the man slurred, pulling a hammer from his belt and bringing it down on Arthur's leg. I glanced at the broken bone. It was a clean, complete break. Arthur was furious, vowing to press charges. He was convinced I'd set the whole thing up. But it turned out the man was telling the truth. He had been married to Arthur's first love for 12 years and had 2 children with her. She intervened, begging Arthur to sign a statement saying it was a mutual fight. The old fool agreed and ended up paying his own medical bills. Arthur was suffering, but Chloe's life was about to get much worse. My attack had nearly destroyed her face, and she had spent the last 6 months undergoing reconstructive surgery. Her head was wrapped in bandages, only her anxious eyes visible. With Caleb arrested and her own future uncertain, she was starting to panic. That little bitch. All we did was say a few words, and she drops dead. What a jinx. And Caleb. No, it's all that bastard's fault. He was born bad. If Caleb hadn't suggested they go teach Lily a lesson, none of this would have happened. She had once been one of the most beautiful women in Chicago. Now, I had turned her into a monster. Thinking of Caleb's mother made her feel a pang of sympathy for her own. She cursed Caleb for being an illegitimate son, the spawn of a homewrecker. Then she cursed me for being low-class trash. As she muttered her curses, her eyelids grew heavy, and she drifted off to sleep. When she woke up, she was in an abandoned warehouse. The unfamiliar surroundings shocked her back to full consciousness. She looked up and saw me standing in front of her, a chilling smile on my face. "Ethan, what do you want? I'm warning you. Don't do anything stupid," she screamed, scrambling to her feet and running for the door. But it was locked, and in the distance, she could see 4 or 5 large, menacing-looking men. She froze, on the verge of a complete breakdown. My voice cut through the silence. Caleb targeted me for his own gain. I can almost understand that. But you and I are brother and sister. Why would you side with him and hurt me? You're not just stupid, you're evil. I unwrapped the bandages from her face. The crisscrossing scars and uneven skin were hideous. This ugly creature had destroyed the only good thing in my life. The irony was sickening. All I was trying to do was get her the help she needed. Why did you have to hurt her? You weren't even worthy of being in the same room as her. How dare you insult her to her face? I punched her right on the bridge of her nose. The bone shattered, and her face collapsed. Chloe screamed in agony. "Brother, I'm sorry. Please forgive me." She groveled on the floor, clinging to my leg, begging for mercy. I stared at her surgically reconstructed face. Ugly, pathetic, weak. Blood filled her mouth as she tried to explain. It was Victoria's idea, to stop her treatment. I just went with Caleb to see her. I didn't know it would be so bad. Caleb said he wanted to get back at you. Dad supported him. Victoria knew Kelsey wanted to put you in your place, so she went along with it. It was all just a series of coincidences. No one wanted it to end like this. She spilled everything, the full extent of the Hayes family's so-called love. Pathetic. Hilarious. Her words became slurred and incoherent. I gestured to one of the large men. He stepped forward, tightening a rope in his hands. Arthur's betrayal had been a wake-up call for Helen. She was desperate to repair our relationship. "You're the only son I have left. I was blind before. Can you forgive me?" She and Victoria waited for me at my hotel every day, repeating the same lines, their attitudes humble and sincere. Victoria, once a slave to her job, was now a devoted daughter. I told them that Chloe had escaped from the hospital and later, consumed by guilt, had killed herself. Someone found her. She hanged herself in the woods. I handed Helen a photo. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Victoria shook her head in disbelief. That's impossible. Chloe loved life too much. I laughed. You confuse hedonism with a love of life. You two really are sisters. But with a criminal record looming, what kind of life did she have to look forward to? My tone shifted. A year ago, it was your idea. Our eyes met. A chill ran down Victoria's spine. Victoria fled the country. As soon as she landed, she took a taxi to a small, pre-booked guest house on the Cambodian border. When she opened the door, the color drained from her face. I was sitting inside, having just brewed a pot of tea. Several men grabbed her and forced her to the floor. I took a sip of my tea, watching her squirm like an insect. We had a deal. I come home, and you pay for Lily's treatment. You're the one who broke the deal, she screamed. You humiliated Kelsey and Caleb. You can't blame me for that. I disagreed. I came home to be a son, not a dog. If they want a dog, they should have paid more. Victoria was terrified. She asked if I was going to kill her like I did Chloe. I clapped my hands and laughed. So you do know your sister. A selfish creature like that would never kill herself. A cool breeze blew in through the window. Good thing you ran to this godforsaken place. It saved me a lot of trouble. I knew this region was famous for its sideshows. I sold Victoria to the owner of a local circus. He was a brutish man with a face full of scars. He looked Victoria over, noting her refined, educated air. He grinned. A cultured one. With a little training, she could be a star. No, I want her to be the clown. I handed him a stack of cash. He flashed a mouthful of yellow teeth and promised I would be satisfied. I mentioned that she was a runner and that he should take precautions. He pulled out a sharp knife and, without a word, sliced through her Achilles tendons. Victoria's screams echoed through the small room, but no one paid her any mind. Her eyes were filled with despair. Ethan, I was wrong. Please don't do this to your sister. I'll become a vegetarian. I'll pray for her for the rest of my life. Please, take me with you. Don't leave me here. Please, Ethan. I ignored her, waving for the men to drag her away. The circus owner wiped the blood from his knife and invited me to come back and visit any time. I would. Arthur was in the hospital, recovering from his broken leg. I had him placed in Chloe's old room. On the nightstand was a framed photo of the five of them, the perfect Hayes family. He knew one of his daughters was dead and the other was missing. His wife had kicked him out. He was completely alone. He finally regretted his favoritism toward Caleb. I would visit him occasionally, telling him stories about Victoria's supposed travels. She was crossing the Gobi Desert. She had been spotted in the Appalachian Mountains. She was exploring the wilderness of Alaska, the canyons of Utah. I enjoyed the look of worry on his face, the helplessness. He confessed his sins to me, genuinely offering to sign over all his shares. When your brother gets out of prison, just give him enough to live on. He was still dreaming. I took him from the hospital and drove, for a long time, to a crematorium in a remote canyon. Standing in front of the furnace, I told him this is where they pushed Lily in. Arthur started to say something, but a heavy blow struck him from behind. He fell to the ground and looked back in shock. It was Caleb. He was holding a baseball bat, his body trembling. Dad, don't blame me. Ethan promised to let me go, as long as you're dead. Arthur coughed up a mouthful of blood. You ungrateful son, this is patricide. Caleb's eyes were empty. That's what you used to call Ethan. He was your son. How did you treat him? Dad, you were the one who broke the bonds of family first. Arthur opened his mouth, but he had no response. He was filled with a bitter regret. How could he have favored such a monster? His eldest son was a stranger. His youngest wanted to kill him. His wife was divorcing him, and his daughters. At that moment, Arthur wanted to die, but not at Caleb's hands. The two of them started a fight. Arthur was at a disadvantage with his broken leg, but Caleb was so inept he couldn't finish the job. Hit him in the head, you idiot. I coached him. He's all blubber. What are you doing hitting his fat? Arthur turned to look at me, his teeth grinding. She was just a girl. Did you really have to go this far? He never got his answer. Caleb's bat connected with his forehead, and blood streamed down his face. In his final moments, Arthur's mind went back more than 20 years, to the night he secretly left a small child on the steps of a group home. "Clean this up, dear brother." At my command, Caleb clumsily shoved the body into the furnace. The flames roared to life. "Say goodbye to your father." As a son, he reluctantly knelt, waiting for the cremation to finish. Just then, several plainclothes police officers appeared and handcuffed Caleb. "You're under arrest for murder." Caleb saw the phone in my hand and started screaming. "You're the mastermind. You forced me to do it. You'll get in trouble for this." But the crematorium's security cameras had no audio. The footage just showed Caleb ambushing his father, the two of them fighting, and then Caleb disposing of the body. I hadn't moved an inch. Now it was Kelsey's turn. With the collapse of the Hayes family and their fortune now in my hands, the Thorns were under immense pressure. Kelsey's parents requested a meeting, apologizing for their daughter's past behavior, for the disrespect she had shown me. Kelsey also apologized, as meek as a kitten, but I could see the terror in her eyes. The Thorns weren't sorry, they were scared. A woman like Kelsey would never regret her actions. To her, I was just a nobody, a mechanic she could step on, but even a corner dog will bite back. I didn't respond to their apologies, but I knew Kelsey had to pay. A storm was brewing in Chicago's business world. Competitors began to circle the Thorn family, and former allies turned on them, eager to pick at the carcass. The Thorns had no choice but to publicly disown Kelsey, cutting her off completely. With no money and nowhere to go, the pampered princess couldn't cope. She came to me, her fiancé, begging for a place to stay. All she had left was her looks. My eyes roamed over her as if I were inspecting a piece of merchandise. She was utterly humiliated, like a servant. "Since you love the place so much, why don't you go work a club? Prime real estate. I'm sure you can put your assets to good use." To make sure she had a successful first day, I arranged for 10 homeless men to be her first clients. Less than 2 weeks later, Kelsey broke. I heard she had developed a severe phobia of men. After 6 months of observation, it was clear Kelsey had completely lost her mind. One night, she jumped from the third-story window of the club. The fall left her paralyzed from the waist down. It was time to visit my dear older sister. I took Helen on a trip abroad. She cried with happiness, naively believing I had finally forgiven her. "Blood is thicker than water. I knew you'd come around, Ethan." I just nodded. I had indeed come around to a decision. We went to Cambodia and attended a performance at a famous circus. The moment Helen saw Victoria, she collapsed, weeping. It was a pain so intense it felt as if a giant hand were squeezing her heart, stopping her breath. Victoria was a cripple, leaning on 2 crutches. Her face was blank, her eyes empty, a soulless puppet. She didn't recognize the old woman calling her name. The circus owner told me she had been disobedient, so he had to give her some medicine to calm her down. Now, she was very obedient. Every day, she played the clown and the wicked witch, a target for the audience's amusement and scorn. They threw apples at her, spit on her. She was a tool for them to vent their frustrations. Helen couldn't bear to watch. Her eldest daughter had been so proud. This was a fate worse than death. Helen finally understood. This was my revenge. I had never forgiven them, and I never would. Her spirit broken, Helen said she wanted to stay and take care of Victoria. The owner was reluctant. Helen was too old to even learn to do a somersault. I gave him another $30,000. He happily agreed to let Helen stay on as the cook. The day I left, it was raining. Helen stood on a hill, supporting Victoria, watching as the last member of their family drove away. They would never see me again. Caleb was sentenced to life in prison. He thought his life was over, but after 12 years, he was granted early release. He had been a model prisoner, earning a reduction in his sentence for good behavior and for contributing to several patents. It felt like a dream, but when he woke up, he was in hell. The day he was released, a job posting caught his eye, hiring seamen for international shipping routes. $30,000 per month, room and board included. For a man completely disconnected from society, it was the perfect opportunity. He got the job. As the ship sailed into international waters, Caleb stood on the deck, looking out at the endless ocean, a sense of hope stirring within him. I may be middle-aged, but I'm far from done. "Ethan, the fight between us isn't over." As he muttered to himself, he saw several figures approaching. He looked closer, and the blood drained from his face. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He was terrified. I was overjoyed. It was so good to see family again. 12 years. I had waited for this day for 12 long years. He dropped to his knees. "Ethan, brother, please let me live. I'm sorry I was wrong." He slammed his head against the steel deck again and again until his forehead was a bloody pulp. I gently stroked his head. How could I ever let him go? He was the one who started it all. "Caleb, your mistake was touching her. Go to hell and try to be a better person in your next life." For the next several hours, his limbs were tied and stretched out. A sharp blade sliced through his skin, and pure salt was poured into the wounds to cleanse his filthy soul. He screamed and begged until he was finally silenced by 1,000 cuts. The ship docked at a port near a sacred mountain. I carried Caleb's remains to the summit, an offering to her spirit. The clouds above parted, forming a shape that looked like a smile, revealing 2 small, sharp teeth. "My name is Lily." She was smiling. At my son's wedding, he thanked me for raising him. He said I was the best mother in the world, that his happiness was all because of me. I saw the news about my niece's death. I saw what that boy did to the Hayes family. They weren't good people, but neither am I. They say a mother's love is great and selfless, but everything has 2 sides. A mother's love can also be evil. It can be selfish. The debts of this life will be paid in the next.